How many of you know about Guy Kawasaki?
I had a speech all teed up for you. It was going to be the top 10 mistakes of entrepreneurs, but I decided I would give a different speech, and I basically went back up there and changed everything. So I'm going to give you a speech that I think that this crowd would truly appreciate, because I had the honor, and I do mean it was an honor, to work for Steve Jobs. And he died about 2 years ago, and I put together a speech based on the lessons that I learned from Steve Jobs, because of all audiences in the world, really, I think that you would appreciate the lessons of Steve Jobs. He was a remarkable person. I worked in the Macintosh division for him. This is like 1983, probably before many of you were born. And that division was probably the largest collection of egomaniacs in the history of California. That's saying a lot, because there's a lot of egomaniacs in California. The Macintosh division probably held that record for a good 30 years. Facebook recently broke it, but we held that record for 30 years. Because we worked for Steve, we had very special rules, unlimited supplies of fresh orange juice. We had a great travel policy. Anybody who flew more than 2 hours could fly first class. I interpreted that rule to begin at the moment you leave your apartment. So I flew first class everywhere for years. I'd fly first class from San Francisco to Monterey. And this division was just trying to change the world. And I learned so much from Steve. I would not be where I am were it not for Steve. So this is part tribute to him and part education and lessons for you. There are many things that I learned from Steve that you can apply to your companies that will, I hope, help you create the next Apple, because the world could use as many apples as possible. Steve is gone now, and I think the world is a lot less interesting place without him. Having said that, I'm pretty confident that he's telling God what to do right now. So, our loss is God's gain, although God may not be looking at it like that right now. But he's telling God what to do. That's the nature of his personality. I'll give you another story as an insight into Steve's personality before I begin this. So one day I'm working in my cubicle. Steve Jobs shows up with a person I never met before. Steve asked me the question, what do you think of this company called Knoware, K-N-O-W-A-R-E, Knowledge Software? And I say, well, Steve, the company's software pretty much sucks. It's boring, it's character-based, doesn't use graphics, doesn't use color. It's nothing that we would want for a Macintosh. And then he says, Guy, I want you to meet the CEO of Knoware. So that's Steve Jobs' trial by fire. And I learned a very valuable lesson that day, that you better tell the truth, because that was a test. And that is a very good indication of what Steve was like. So I have been watching tech speakers for about 30 years now, and I learned 2 points about most tech speakers. May you break this trend. But most tech speakers, first of all, suck as speakers. And secondly, they go long. That is a particularly bad combination, because if you suck and you go short, it's okay. And if you're great and you go long, it's okay. But if you suck and go long, that's like being stupid and arrogant. It's just a bad combination. And so what I do is I always use a top 10 format. So that way, in case you think I suck, you know approximately how much longer I'll suck. I have 10 key points for you today. So these are my top 10 lessons of Steve Jobs. So lesson number 1 that I learned is that pretty much experts are clueless. Experts are going to tell you what can and cannot be done, what should and should not be done. I would put myself in this bucket too. Not that I'm trying to say I'm an expert. I'm saying that, it's very, very dangerous to listen to experts. I think there are 2 kinds of experts in the world. Okay, so there's one expert, sort of a self-declared expert, but it's pretty obvious that person is a loser, right? Self-declared, egomaniac. What we call a schmexpert, which is a combination of schmuck and expert. And that person, that's not so dangerous an expert. The really dangerous expert is this expert who's, dresses in all black, very rich, powerful, visible, owns a lot of things that end in I, like Maserati, Lamborghini, Ferrari, Armani. Not to pick on Italy. Audi is okay, I will say. And so what I learned from, pretty much experts, the reason why they're experts and they're advisors and they're journalists and analysts is because they cannot do. If they could do, they would be entrepreneurs like you. So I think the way you have to approach experts is just like the way you approach the flu. So how do you inoculate yourself for the flu? You get exposed to a little bit of flu so that when you encounter real flu, you already have built up resistance. So I'm going to give you some examples of clueless advice so that when you encounter clueless advice in your own life, you have already built up the antibodies. So Thomas Watson, chairman of IBM, allegedly said in 1943 that he thought there was a world market for 5 computers. I have 5 computers in my house. I have all the computers he anticipated in the world in my house. Imagine if you were Steve or Woz and you said, oh, Thomas Watson said there's only a market for 5 computers. Why should we start Apple? There's only 5 computers in the world. Another example, this telephone has too many shortcomings to be seriously considered as a means of communication. The device is inherently of no value to us. Western Union said this in 1876. Western Union in 1876 wrote off telephony. Oops. How many of you have used Western Union lately? How many of you have used PayPal lately? Right? So I think Western Union should be PayPal, but it's very hard to go from telegraph to internet if you write off telephone in the middle. It's just too big a chasm to cross. Now, maybe the strategic direction for Western Union in 1877 was, let's teach Americans the Morse code. How hard could that be? We'll teach everybody the Morse code, then we can put a telegraph in every house, right? Wrote off telephony, 1876. There is no reason why anyone would want a computer in their home, right? Ken Olsen, founder of DEC, a great entrepreneur, great innovator. But he was so successful in the mini computer curve, he could not embrace the personal computer curve. That is truly one of the most dangerous things. Because if you were Steve or Woz and you said, Mr. Olsen, we believe that computers should not be mainframes. They shouldn't even be mini computers. Computers should be small and cheap and easy to use. So small, so cheap, so easy to use, they'd be personal computers. Personal computers you could have in your house. And the expert, the billionaire, the creator of DEC, said to you, but son, there is no reason why anybody would want a computer in their home. And if they had listened to such advice, Apple would not exist. So, experts are clueless. Second thing I learned is that customers cannot tell you what they want. Customers are going to tell you, we want better, faster, cheaper status quo. Better, faster, cheaper Apple II. Better, faster, cheaper MS-DOS machine. No customer told Apple, we want a cute little graphics toy with a mouse that integrates fonts and graphics and text together. Nobody told us about WYSIWYG printing. They wanted bigger, faster, cheaper Apple II. They wanted to stay on the same curve. Nobody asked for this computer. The beauty of Steve Jobs, and I believe the reason why Apple has been so successful, is that it either anticipates what people want before they know it, or they make something and then they make people want it. Either method can work, okay? But asking people what they want, all they're going to tell you is bigger, faster, cheaper, marginally better status quo. Number three thing that I learned from Steve is that, wow, design counts. It may not be that everybody in the world cares about design, but there are enough people in the world who care about design. We'll do a little survey here. So how many of you in this room use a Macintosh laptop? Some beautiful, thin, looking thing like that, right? And how many of you use this thick, big, ugly, black, plastic Windows laptop? Okay, so these are the people who are oppressed because nobody would use a big, thick, ugly, black, plastic laptop unless they were forced to do it. And I learned that from Steve Jobs. Design counts. Don't ever think that design doesn't count. There is no excuse for lousy design. Next thing that I learned from Steve is that integration sells. This is a great illustration of integration. So lots of people attribute lots of reasons to the success of iPod. The user interface, the wheel, all that kind of stuff, right? I think the reason why iPod was successful is because of the integration of iPod with iTunes. That without iTunes, a legal way to pay for music at 99 cents a song from the 6 biggest music companies, iPod would not have succeeded. It is the integration of iPod and iTunes that made iPod successful. Integration makes things sell. Next thing I learned is that innovation occurs on the next curve. The next curve, not the curve you're on. Classic example, in the 1800s, there was an ice harvesting curve. On the ice harvesting curve, what did Bubba and Junior do? Bubba and Junior waited for winter, went to a frozen lake or a frozen pond, cut blocks of ice. Bubba and Junior's idea was saws, horses, and sleighs. Okay, that was Ice 1.0. Ice 2.0 is the ice factory. Now, major technological breakthrough. It does not have to be winter. It does not have to be a cold city. You could have an ice factory in Singapore. What a breakthrough. No more waiting for winter. No more waiting in a cold city. This is a major breakthrough. This is centralized freezing of water, delivery through the ice man and the ice truck. This is Ice 2.0. Ice 3.0 is the refrigerator curve 30 years later. This is even better than an ice factory because the ice man had to deliver ice to your house before. Now you had your own ice factory. You had a personal ice factory. You had a PC, if you will, a personal chiller. Significant breakthrough. Now, the most important lesson from this Ice 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0 is that the people who are ice harvesters did not make the transition to ice factories. And the people who were ice factories did not make the transition to refrigerators. And this is because most companies, and this is the warning for you, most companies define themselves in terms of the process and the product they already make. We harvest ice in the winter. We freeze water centrally. We make a mechanical contraption called a refrigerator. If you were to zoom out of that and ask yourself, well, what does the customer of the ice harvesters, the ice factory, and the refrigerator company, what do they get from those 3 kinds of entities? They get convenience, and they get cleanliness. So actually, an ice harvester and an ice factory and a refrigerator company, they're all in the same business. They're in the business of providing people a means to cleanliness and convenience. So you would think that a forward-thinking, entrepreneurial ice harvester, upon seeing the possibilities of an ice factory, would say, holy cow, Bubba, we don't have to live in a cold city. We don't have to wait for winter. We don't need to cut blocks of ice. We could build a factory. And if you owned an ice factory, upon seeing a refrigerator, you'd say, holy cow, Bubba, we don't have to be limited to freezing ice centrally, putting ice in a truck, and having our ice men deliver ice. We could build refrigerators, and we could sell these refrigerators to everybody who had electricity. We could sell many more refrigerators than we could deliver blocks of ice. But none of the companies ever did that. They defined themselves in terms of what they already did. We harvest ice. We freeze water centrally. We make a mechanical gizmo called the refrigerator. What I learned from Steve Jobs is that truly the innovation occurs not on the curve you're on, but on the next curve. If you're in the telegraph business, it occurs on the telephone curve. If you're on the copper-based telephone business, it occurs in the wireless space. It's always the next curve where the great action is. Next thing I learned is that the biggest challenges beget the best work. Many people think that you should give a team and a company small, bite-sized, accomplishable, sort of positive reinforcement, self-reinforcement, little goals. Apple did exactly the opposite. Apple gave me and gave us, the Macintosh division, this huge goal. We wanted to prevent worldwide domination of information by IBM. We didn't want to make a slightly better personal computer. We wanted to save society from a totalitarian, utopian, George Orwellian 1984 vision of the future. That's the goal that Apple set for the Macintosh division. And you as entrepreneurs, I want you to think of goals like that. Not to make a slightly better widget. I want you to prevent worldwide domination. I want you to change the world. Next thing I learned from Steve is that contrary to what many people think, that changing your mind is a sign of a mistake or stupidity, changing your mind is actually a sign of intelligence. The fact that you could notice that you did something wrong and then you had the courage to change it. I'll give you an example. At the introduction of the iPhone, Steve Jobs says, our innovative approach using Web 2.0 based standards lets developers create amazing new applications while keeping the iPhone secure and reliable. Let me translate Steve Jobs' speak for this. Steve Jobs is saying, no external applications. The way you create added functionality for an iPhone is a Safari plugin. That's what Web 2.0 based standards means. No applications. You have to make it work within the Safari browser. The experts, remember slide 1? The experts, upon seeing this, said, holy cow, Steve, you are so right. A phone has to be secure and reliable. We shouldn't let all that crap from third-party developers onto our phone. We need to keep it secure and reliable. Now, one could ask, well, why does a phone have to be secure and reliable, but your computer can have third-party software? Shouldn't your computer be secure and reliable? But let's not go down that track. The experts said, my God, Steve, you did it. You're absolutely right. Let's keep our phones secure and reliable. Fast forward 12 months, 11 months. Apple executives to showcase Mac OS X Leopard and OS X iPhone development platforms at Worldwide Developer Conference 2008 Keynote. Let me translate this for you. This is Apple 11 months later saying, we're going to open it up. Now anybody can write an app. We've created an SDK. We've created a platform for you to create iPhone apps. In other words, this is a 180-degree reversal. 2007, we keep the phone secure and reliable. We lock out apps. 2008, we open up the phone. We let you create apps. 180-degree reversal. When the experts heard this, they said, Steve, you're absolutely right. You need to open up the architecture. We want to have iFart, and we want to have, Life 360. We want to have let 1,000 flowers bloom. We need an app for that. And when I saw this, I said, wow. Wouldn't you think they would say, Steve, you are an idiot. You said the phone had to be closed. A year later, now you're saying the phone has to be open. But really, the market, the experts, everybody figured out, you know what? Steve was wrong the first time. Locking people out of making apps was a mistake. But Steve and Apple, to their credit, realized the mistake and completely reversed themselves. So you as entrepreneurs, when you realize you have the wrong model or the wrong product or the wrong service or the wrong vision or the wrong pricing or whatever it is, I'm telling you now, changing your mind is a sign of intelligence, not a sign of stupidity. Number eight that I learned from Steve is that value is not the same thing as price, because I can honestly tell you no one ever bought a Macintosh because the Macintosh was cheaper. No one, because it is simply not true. However, if you add everything up, including what you'd have to raise to do Windows debugging, a Macintosh is a better value. And I learned this from Steve. It's not the list price on day one. It's the total cost of ownership through the life cycle of a product. It is the product, it is the support, the training, the transferability of data. It is not simply the list price. Value is more important than list price. The ninth thing I learned from Steve is that A players hire A+ players. That is, if you're an A player, you hire people who are better than you, not worse than you. If you're a B player, however, you hire C players. And if you're a C player, you hire a D player. And if you're a D player, you hire an E player. Why does a B player hire a C player who hires a D player who hires an E player? It's because if you're a B player, you want to think that you're smarter and better than the person you hire. And so you hire someone beneath you. And then that person hires someone beneath them. And if you start down this path, you will wake up one day and you will see what's called in Silicon Valley the bozo explosion. You need to fight the bozo explosion, especially engineers, because engineers think that engineering is hard and everything else is easy, right? So if you're an engineer, you think, this is the hard stuff. Sales is easy, marketing is easy, finance is easy, ops is easy, right? I can hire anybody to do that. And you'll find out that you want to hire people who are better than sales than you are as an engineer. Because that's what makes a team strong, that you hire A+ players. This is a picture of the Macintosh division employees. This is about 20 years after Macintosh was introduced. And I have never worked with a smarter group of people than these people. I'm like 50% of the IQ points of these people. I freely admit that. This was a truly great experience. This changed my life. Number 10 I learned is that real entrepreneurs ship. They don't just live in this dark room programming, trying to make this perfect product. They ship. They ship something that is the next curve. But I'm telling you, based on a song, there's a song called Don't Worry, Be Happy. What real entrepreneurs do is they don't worry, be crappy. I'm not telling you that when you jump curves, that when you get to that next curve, it has to be perfect. I'm telling you, it has to be on the next curve. But the first permutations of a product on the next curve are never perfect. The first laser writer was so much better than the best daisy wheel printer, but it was far from perfect. The first Macintosh was so much better than an MS-DOS machine or an Apple II, but it too was far from perfect. The first telephone was so much better than the best telegraph, but it was far from perfect. So don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you to ship crap, okay? I'm telling you to ship something that jumps curves, that is innovative and revolutionary, but has elements of crappiness to it. This is a machine made by Xerox PARC. Arguably, the difference between Xerox PARC and Apple is that Apple could squeeze the trigger and Apple could ship. Xerox PARC wanted to just make a better and better and better computer, and it never shipped. That's the difference. And I learned this lesson from Steve. At some point, real entrepreneurs ship. The 11th thing, because I'm going to give you bonus tonight, because I'm at Cal. The 11th thing is all of marketing boils down to this very simple equation, which is marketing equals unique value. Okay? I'm going to give you the equivalent of an MBA in the next slide. Very simple graph. Vertical axis. How unique is this thing? Horizontal axis is how valuable is this thing? This is a 2x2 matrix. If any of you work for McKinsey for a summer or anticipate working for McKinsey for a summer, this is called a 2x2 matrix. I'll tell you what McKinsey will charge you $250,000 for. You want to be in the upper right-hand corner. Okay, now you're all qualified to work for McKinsey. Okay, so let's go through all four corners. Bottom right corner. Bottom right corner is where you have something that's valuable, but it's not unique. You slap the same operating system on the same hardware. You have to compete on price. It's a generic business. Could be valuable what you do, but it's about price. In the next corner is the corner where you have something that only you do. It is truly unique, but it is of no value. In that corner, you are just plain stupid. This corner, the bottom left corner, is the worst corner because in that corner you have something that's not valuable and not unique. I call this the dot-com corner. Okay? So let's review one great example from the dot-com business, pets.com. Let me just give you the Silicon Valley pitch for pets.com. And may you never use such logic. Okay? So this is how it goes. There are 300 million Americans. 1 in 4 owns a dog, 75 million dogs. Each dog eats 2 cans of dog food per day, 150 million cans of dog food per day, total addressable market. With my rock star programmers, how hard could it be to achieve a mere 1% market share? 1% market share of 150 million cans of dog food per day is 1.5 million cans. Let's say I make, conservatively speaking, $1 per can. That's $1.5 million per day gross margin. And unlike B2B business, dogs eat every day of the year, right? So we take $1.5 million and we multiply by 365 and we get $500, $600 million business. Worst case, conservatively speaking, first year revenue. How hard could this be? Right? With our patent pending, curve jumping, paradigm shifting, rock star software, we're gonna solve this supply chain management problem because the dog food business is supply chain management. You have a dog, you have a cow. You need to kill the cow, cut it in pieces, put it in the can, get it to the dog. This is CRM, you know, right? Cow relationship management. Okay. And in this path from dog to cow or cow to dog, there's inefficiencies in it. And so we're going to break down those inefficiencies. One inefficiency is the dog food store. Why do people go to a dog food store? Why do you get in your car, find a parking space, go into the store and buy dog food? Like, why would you do that? Do you go in that store? Do you make taste comparisons? Are you doing shopping? No, it's for crying out loud. It's dead cows in cans, right? So we're going to eliminate the dog food store. That way, everybody can get a discount on dog food. The problem is that you may give a discount on dog food, but then you have to charge to get the dead cow in the can to people's houses. And so you take out this discount, but then you have to put in shipping and handling, and then somebody has to be at home because when UPS drops off the dead cow in the can, somebody has to be there to get it. So it's not as convenient, and it's the same effective price. So really, it's not that valuable to be Pets.com if you're a customer. And then, to compound that problem, stupid people like me, we said, wow, Kleiner Perkins has a Pets.com. Sequoia has a Pets.com. You know? Draper Fisher Jervison has a Pets.com. We need a Pets.com, right? Because, my God, 75 million dogs eating 2 cans of dog food per day, conservatively speaking, that's a big market. We need to tap that market. So that's why there was Pets.com, ePets.com, iPets.com, LastMinutePets.com, DiscountPets.com. There are 10 ways to spend as much money online as at the dog food store and be less convenient. So in that corner, you're not valuable and you're not unique. That's the worst corner of all. May you never be in that corner. The corner you want to be in is this corner up here. Okay? Here's your MBA marketing, all right? You want to be in the upper right-hand corner. You want a product, the only product that you can buy songs from the 6 major music companies, totally integrated, very valuable to do that, and you can only get it on an iPod, right? That's the corner. If you, in the car business, you know, all of us have cars that can park parallel to the curb. That's fine if there's lots of parking. How many of us have a car that can park perpendicular to the curb? That's the smart car, one of the few cars that can park perpendicular to the curb. Many of you have watches, right? Breitling makes a watch called the Breitling Emergency. If you unscrew a big knob on the Breitling Emergency and pull out the antenna, it broadcasts a signal, 121.5 megahertz signal, to airplanes. Airplanes see the signal, and they say, somebody's having an emergency. Send Kevin Costner in the Coast Guard helicopter to rescue that person. All right, so this is not something when you take the wrong exit off Highway 880. This is when you're about to die. But that is truly a unique watch. It can save your life. Right? So I'm telling you, if you're an engineer, you need to create a product that's unique and valuable. If you're a marketing person, you need to convince the world that the product you've created is unique and valuable. That is the holy grail. That is the essence of entrepreneurship. When you're in that upper right-hand corner, you make meaning, you make margin, you make money, you make history. That's where the action is. Then you will endow not just chairs, you'll be giving buildings to Cal. Okay? That's the corner you want to be in. And the last thing I'll tell you is my extra bonus for my friends here at Cal. Many times when you come to entrepreneurship, you'll deal with skeptics. And the skeptics will say, well, if you show it to me, I'll believe it. But I'll tell you, my experience and what I learned from Steve Jobs is when it comes to entrepreneurship, this is the way that it works. Sometimes you have to believe in something to see it, as opposed to see something to believe it. The only reason why Macintosh succeeded is because we believed in Macintosh. We believed in it so much that we convinced people to write software for it when it didn't make sense. We convinced people to start using it when there was no software. We believed in it so strong that eventually it came true. And if we had taken the attitude that when everything was perfect and everything was done, and we could see it, that's when we would believe it. It would never happen. And I dare say that that's the test for most entrepreneurial companies, right? So I'll give you some examples. Pierre Magyar, founder of eBay, he says, my girlfriend collects Pez dispensers. She wanted to sell Pez dispensers online. There was no way for her to do it. So I created eBay. By the way, that's a total bullshit story, okay? It's a great story, but it's a bullshit story. In a sense, eBay is one of those kind of companies, right? So eBay, if you didn't believe in eBay, if you didn't believe you could get a reasonably priced used HP printer, if you didn't believe that, you would never see the HP printer listed. If you were the seller of the HP printer, you would never think to try to sell something like that online. Because you'd have to ask yourself, well, if I'm the seller of this printer, how do I know I'll get paid? And if I'm the buyer of this printer, how do I know after I've paid it'll work? People needed to believe in eBay before they saw it. People needed to believe in Google, right? Like there were 5 other search engines at the time. Who ever thought that the way to measure relevance is the inbound links? I mean, who would have thought? What if you're YouTube? What if you're the founders of YouTube? So imagine the pitch for YouTube. So we need unlimited bandwidth and unlimited server space so people can upload illegal video. And what's going to make us tip is when people start dropping Mentos into Diet Cokes. Okay? Who in this room would fund YouTube? Right? How about Twitter? Oh yeah, we're going to enable people to send out 140-character messages to anybody in the world telling them that their cat rolled over, that the line at Starbucks is long. And right now, it's about cats and it's about Starbucks, but someday it will change governments. It will change the world. One might logically ask the founders of Twitter at that point, well, what? Oh. One might logically ask the founders of Twitter at that point, well, have you heard of email? Have you heard of SMS? Have you heard of IRC? There are already ways to send out stupid text messages. What does the world need with another one? But people believed in Twitter. It started at South by Southwest. People believed in Twitter. And so one day, you woke up and wow, Twitter is a great form of communication. In all these cases, it took people believing in Apple, eBay, Twitter, YouTube, Google, for those companies to become real. And that is probably the most important lesson I can leave you with at all, that As an entrepreneur, you're going to face a lot of skepticism, a lot of doubt, a lot of challenges. And what it's going to take for you to succeed is, first of all, you need to believe. Because if you believe, then you might see it. And that's the lessons of Steve Jobs. Good luck to you all. Thank you very much. Thank you.